On the one hand, you suggest that the federal government should not take these negotiations wholesale. And again, you say that, or the terms for the negotiations wholesale, you also seem to suggest that they seem to be clamping down on the members of Boko Haram. But at the same time, you welcome the negotiations, you welcome the peace offer of Boko Haram. How do we reconcile these two sides?
Interesting question, Mope. Interesting question. I have said this on your program many a times, that I believe in the negotiation at any time, any point in time. Why? Because war is never an end to any issue of conflict. And we must use the carrot and stick approach. While wielding the stick, anytime somebody says, we want to talk because your stick is becoming very heavy on us, then we talk. And you must also know that there was a civil war in this country. It ended with no victor, no vanquished, and negotiated settlement. Although those of us in the Southeast are yet to feel the true 3 R's. But the war came to an end. Then the issue of militancy, when I was also calling those in the South-South militancy terrorists, people said they were militants because they were not terrorists. I also advocated the stick and carrot approach. And at the end, the carrot approach prevailed. Today, we have the Boko Haram in the Northeast. You must exercise all options. The United States of America will tell you, you can never negotiate with any terrorist. But underbelly, there is subtle negotiations because you must have windows of opportunity to end the insurgency. In a military operation, when you circle an enemy, you do not intend to annihilate an enemy. You must leave a room for the enemy to escape so that you can negotiate. The FARC in Colombia for 50 years have fought. What are they doing today in Japan? They are talking negotiation. Therefore, negotiation should not be a foreign language. But the language that is very strange is that the Boko Haram must not be left to dictate the modus operandi of the negotiation. They have already articulated their conditions. Federal government must study this condition and then say, we refuse to go by X, Y, Z. We will give you A, B, C. And that is the art of negotiation. But in the interim, what the federal government ought to say is, you must cease fire. But having said that, how do you know that the crisis in Plateau will not continue after the negotiation with Boko Haram?
I was just about to ask you,
the
Mr.
political
Gbanite,
crisis and killing in Kaduna will cease because of Boko Haram? Which faction of Boko Haram are you dealing with?
I was just about to ask you
that
same question you're posing back, that do we truly understand how Boko Haram operates, and is this just Boko Haram in Borno State, or was this the same Boko Haram that carried out the attacks in the UN building, the police headquarters, that also caused the havoc in Kano State that we witnessed early this year? So do we fully understand the problem of Boko Haram now?
The general public in Nigeria sees Boko Haram as northerners who don't want President Jonathan to govern. And that is quite far from the truth. The northerners within themselves, the problem I have with them is inability to call a spade because of this language called Ba Kwomi, translated to mean no problem. There is Kwomi, there is problem indeed. I don't like the idea of Lima airbrushing the truth. There is culpability in Borno State. We had various factions of Boko Haram under the Yusuf Foy segment, which were called the Yusufia.
Okay.
Now we have migrated to another group that trained in Malaysia and the Islamic Maghreb of Algeria. We also have a group that had been a sleeper cell under the leadership of the late Muammar Gaddafi of Libya, who had greater influence in the northern region. Then the Saudi Wahidi, a family that he had talked about, also have their own political and religious influence in the north. The same way the Vatican will have religious influence in the south, and the English Anglican will have influence in the south. But having said that,
let me
it becomes very difficult to now say, this is the faction of Boko Haram you're dealing. It is very difficult.
Just a minute. Let me jump in and let you listen to this particular comment, and we'd like to get your thoughts on this one.
Sure.
I think this is within the realm of the responsibilities of the security agencies to unearth the truth. I am more of a developmental politician. I am more interested in addressing the core issues, the underlying factors that made our society vulnerable to the antics of religious demagogues and all sorts of misfits that are inducting our young ones into the hall of infamy. So I don't want to dabble into the functions of the security agencies. Neither do I deem it fit to dignify with a response insinuations and accusations from any quarter. But it is the responsibility of the security agencies to unearth whoever is involved and brought that person to justice.
What do you think about the response of the government there?
He is very correct. A young man, I have respect for him. He inherited a cataclysmic environment that was set in place by the last governor, Sheriff. If you noticed, Borno axis was a very calm area during the era of Malakachala. The farmers were still farming. There was a good relationship between him and the traditional rulers. When Sheriff came in, he balkanized the districts from 30 to 300. He imposed a shehu, and that was why the Boko Haram almost assassinated an existing emir. To tell you the likeness of the area, the governor is apt in saying that it is the duty of the security agencies to unearth any problems within the area. The president at one time told us that Boko Haram has permeated his party. We thought it was laughable. The last NSA also said that PDP are the sponsors of Boko Haram. Today we have two PDP senators in Ndume and Zana who are struggling to exculpate themselves from their activity. Now, isn't it very curious that Boko Haram leadership wants to go to Saudi Arabia? How do you afford to travel to Saudi Arabia? Who is your financier? The man who is the suicide bomber have not even afforded to go for religious Hajj. But the man who is the helms of Boko Haram tells you he wants to be in Saudi Arabia.
All right, Mr. Gbanite.
It falls in line in what the elites are saying, that there is a fundamental financiers amongst the elite, and notably even PDP, and there is a cross-pollination of funding among the ANPP issue also, because you could, no matter how you look at it, if 9 out of 10 indigents of Borno points a finger at SARS, the former governor, then the security agencies need to sit down with him and discuss.
Briefly on this one.
Well, just briefly, just before we go, he was saying that it's the job of the security agencies to unearth those behind it. He's a developmental governor. You know that development cannot take place if there is no security. So do you think that he has a duty to assist the security agencies in helping unearth those who could be trying to destabilize his government?
I believe that His Excellency Governor Shetima should be able to break away from whoever made it possible for him to become the governor, i.e. Modu Sharif. He ought to believe that, like the former Emperor Obasanjo have always espoused, that God can even use a devil to make one an important personality. He must divorce himself from Sharif and aid the security agencies to come out with the truth.
All right,
The Department of State Security Services, time without number, have said that they are going to unearth those who are behind all this financing.